Welcome back to A Better Way of Earning podcast. If you're joining us for the first time, we're so glad that you're here. And if you've been with us since season one, thank you for coming back. This season is going to be a little different. Last season, we explored many ways people earn a living. We sat down with some entrepreneurs, professionals, leaders, creatives, and business owners who showed us that success doesn't come in one shape, one title, or even one path. And as we listen to those stories and we keep hearing the same thing, nobody's journey looked like the plan. Not one. And that realization led us to a bigger question. What if the advice we've been given about success isn't wrong, but incomplete? This, my friends, is what season two is all about. If you tune into season one, we learned about how success looks different for everyone, that career paths are rarely straight lines, setbacks are normal, reinvention is a part of the process, and that most of us didn't start where we ended up. We discussed entrepreneurship, we discussed investing, we discussed business practices, skills, how to not only locate your skills, but to refine your skills and to figure out how you can take your career path or the journey that you're on right now and refine it to something that better fits you, that's more satisfying, and the outcome gives you a better balance of what you want out of your life. And so, as we went through season one of the frequent things that I noticed when I met not only our talk show guests, but people who had listened to the podcast was, I've tried a lot, but it's not really working, Doc. And so that brought me to the realization that we need to talk about the playbook that life has put out there that most of us have tried page by page to follow. But then we get disappointed, we get let down, we're hurt, we're broke because someone else's journey or story or expertise or instructions isn't working for what and where our life is currently, right? And so, just a little bit about me. I know that I give advice about business, I teach business acumen, but I'm very careful about telling people that this is the only way. I don't want to be that person because where you are in your journey of life, what you're doing, what your assets are, what your resources are, is completely unique to you. So if you're following someone that's giving you this step by step instruction of exactly what you need to do to repeat the success that they say that they've had, I'm not going to tell you to stop. But what I will caution you to do is don't work so hard to restructure everything about who you are, what you do, what you know, and what you're great at to fit in someone else's playbook. I'm a global speaker and I spend a lot of time talking on stages. And what I poignantly call this is walking in someone else's shoes. And oftentimes, especially for those of us who are first generation, for those of you who don't know what first generation means, and we coined that probably during the pandemic, but most of us are the first in our families to step into this type of journey. We've been taught to go to school, get your education, get a good job, retire from that job, and life should be great, right? Well, for the past two and a half generations, we've been challenging that thought process. We've been testing out our own pathways. And a lot of the times we're navigating in waters and environments that we've never been in before. And when you're a first generation, it's not like you have the rich uncle or aunt that you could just call, or parents who have created this path for you to follow. You don't have those resources to contact because those are your trusted resources. So, what you end up doing is going to the internet. It's either Chat, GPT, or Gemini, or whatever AI source that you're using now, or you follow someone on social media, someone that is um, prominent, a prominent figure, books, audio books, etc. So you can kind of find your footing. Well, for a lot of us, some of those steps that people are putting out there are unique to the resources that they had to start. I remember I was listening to, there was this great article. So I decided, oh, this sounds interesting. So there was a young lady that was talking about building her business, whatever the business was. I think it was a retail store or something like that. But how the title was From Rags to Riches. And so, of course, I'm starting out in my journey and I am broke with extra ERs. So, of course, I'm looking for these success stories to tell me how I can go from not having anything to building what I imagine was supposed to be my level of success, right? So I'm into this article, and this young lady is talking about her journey and the ups and downs, and I'm really into it until I got to about paragraph 3. In paragraph 3, she said, you know, I launched my business with $30,000, and those resources went quick. Er, Okay. Well, this may not be the article for me because right now, the way that my bank accounts be working, I don't have 30 grand sitting around that I can just kind of invest in a what if. You know what I'm saying? So, but I, that was the moment, that was like an eye opening moment for me. And what it did was, because I was so hungry for information, because I felt so lost in the space between my vision and my current circumstance, I actually got really deflated, right? I started looking at more stories, and everybody's story kind of had the same tone where they had tens of thousands of dollars that they were able to get out there and get going. These are the people that I was seeing that had the maximum amount of success. I didn't hear the stories of people that had a house full of kids and a spouse and paying bills and working a dead end job and still finding their level of success. Now, were those stories out there? Probably. But during the time that I was doing the research, did I find that? Absolutely not. So I say all that because that lesson, that deflation, that setback for me stuck with me. And as I travel the globe and as I speak to people, I started noticing that I wasn't the only one. That people were trying to find something relatable to hold on to give them not only a pathway, but hope that what I'm trying to do is actually going to work out. So this is kind of where my life's journey, or my success journey, reshaped itself. I never wanted to be the person to stand on the stage or stand in front of a bunch of people or even talk to someone and tout about my cars and houses and how much money and how successful I am and whatever. Because for me, material things is just material things. My grandmother taught me a long time ago that worshiping something that is material can end up breaking your heart, because at any time that stuff can be taken away from you. What you want to really hold value into is your ethics, your integrity, and who you are throughout your this navigation of this success journey. And so I created the platform Ascent to help people that did not have degrees, or people that were normally overlooked because they were creatives, or maybe their pathway didn't yield coming out of high school, going straight to college and staying in one industry and building a success out of that. Maybe their pathway looked like mine, where I had to have jobs. I was a young mother. I did not have, parents. My parents are amazing, but they didn't have resources just to keep funding me where I could travel around the world and find my life, or start something and quit that and whatever. That wasn't my story. And so I wanted to build a platform that welcomed everyone with every background. And that's what Ascent is. Ascent allows you to tell your professional story, whether you're starting out as a high school student or a college student, or you're doing a career change, or you're just knowing that there's something more out there. You feel like there's something more out there. That was my whole goal for building Ascent, the platform. Ascent led to me realizing that people need to hear stories more unique or similar to what they're going through, which led my husband and I to create a better way of earning talk show. And we are blessed enough to go around state by state and sit and speak with so many amazing people. And I say it that way because I don't want anybody to feel like I'm only seeking out, the billionaires or the success people. I'm meeting people where they are in life. Um, you guys will see a episode where there was a young lady that when I pulled up and got some gas, and this young lady was filming a TikTok video, and I just kind of walked up to her and had a conversation. And what was so beautiful about me talking to this perfect stranger was a lot of people would have looked at what she was doing as just, she's just being arrogant, she's wanting to be seen or whatever. But within 5 minutes of talking to this young lady, what I found out was she's building her TikTok following because she is a third generation of tailors. Her grandfather, her great grandfather owned a custom clothing shop, a tailor. And so when her grandfather passed, the family didn't keep this up. And because that really stuck with her, she wanted to build up a following so that in her community she could reopen that tailor shop and carry on her family tradition. And I got in the car after that conversation, and the first thing I thought to myself was, wow, like every day, each one of us is trying to accomplish something. And the word success, I think, needs to be more fluid than something that is defined, because success for me is different for success for you. I tell you all that because within this podcast, season two became more of an anchor of providing more relevant resources and information to help everyone within every space that you find yourself in. That realization or evolution in this podcast journey led me to create something that I am coining the public playbook. Okay. The public playbook for me means that someone somewhere along your journey has given you the this is how you're supposed to do it playbook. And we all know that somebody's always doing that. We hear it all the time. We hear it from the internet, we hear it from friends, we definitely hear it from family, especially when you're doing something vastly different than what they understand. And so the public playbook tends to delay or interrupt our ability to freely explore what our pathway is. And so throughout season two, we're going to challenge the public playbook and talk about how sometimes that playbook or those suggestions just doesn't work for people. Not only talk about how it doesn't work, but we're going to dive deeper into the why. Why is it that someone can follow this path, this strategy, and find their level of success? And some of us who try to repeat the same steps don't achieve the same level. So we're going to explore that. And I want to make sure that I unpack this in a way so that you don't feel like you're failing, but you begin to understand your flow, your ability, your journey better. Because the world has changed. Over the past 50 years, the concept of how we live life has drastically evolved. But there are some of us that are hesitant and not only living that way, but even dipping a toe in it and exploring it. You know what I mean? Because someone else, most of the time, is someone who is very impactful and that we really respect in our lives that has told us, don't do that. Well, we're going to talk about technology, AI, hybrid work, entrepreneurship, the gig economy, skills first hiring, navigating in this oversaturated world right now where it feels like either you're always being sold to or you always have to sell, right? One of the two is happening every day. We're going to talk about the psychological impact that social media has had on our organic brain to either help or deter some of our growths. And we're also going to talk about what nobody ever taught us. Those things that our parents or grandparents wasn't able to talk to us about because they never experienced it. We sit in an era right now of things that no one taught us how to navigate, how to negotiate. No one told us how to now build new wealth out of these new tools. Nobody taught us about how to identify things like a toxic workplace. Let me put a pin here because I know somebody's thinking, well, I've heard of that. Yes, you've heard of that. But do you understand truly what a toxic workplace means? Because a lot of people that I talk to about toxic workplaces, they reduce it down to, well, I don't like the work they give me, or I'm not being paid enough, or I'm not respected, and people don't listen to my ideas. That's not a true toxic workplace. That's a workplace that's frustrating you, but it's not toxic. So we're going to talk about what toxic workplaces look like. No one actually taught us what leadership really means. Those of us who entered into leadership at whatever phase or stage in our career, most of us entered into it assuming that we knew what it meant because we were following our previous leader, good or bad. We were emulating people that we've seen, whether it was television or online or in other workspaces. But it took time for us to give ourselves permission to understand what type of leader that we were. Not the 6 different styles of leadership. It's there. You can Google it. I'm talking about what true leadership is and how you and your personality and how you articulate things and how you even view things can be it can impact your leadership style. And what do you do with that? And how do you know if it's right? And how do you not only take your leadership style, but you have the people that need you to be able to understand, accept, and follow that leadership style. And finally, we're definitely going to spend time talking about how to recover from making some mistakes. Because the truth is, my friends, you are going to make more mistakes than you're going to make with great decisions in the beginning, in the middle, and towards the end, because that's a part of life. If things were stagnant, if things remain the same, then you could make a mistake, learn from a mistake, and then be able to soar from it because your environment never changed. But as we know, we live in a world that every single day there is something new. There is a new shift. There is a new way to work. There is a new concept. There is a new trend. There's a new interest level, et cetera, et cetera. So, how do you recover from mistakes in an environment that you never get a chance to become comfortable in? So, we're going to talk about that. Everybody with me? Y'all still with me? Okay. Why does this matter? Why is this important for me to do, especially in season 2? I want to talk to our future leaders. I want to speak with those that are entering into life, that are just not starting out in their decision making ability of being out there on their own. Not that anyone else is not important, but what I'm figuring out is we continue to foster generations of less aware adults trying to navigate a very complex circumstance called life, business, money. And so our youth is finding their information through outside resources. Sometimes those resources may be entertaining. Those resources may have a lot of followers, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the people that you're following have walked their talk. So, season 2 for me is so important because there are some fundamentals out there that if you want to achieve any level of comfort or comfortability or success or happiness, there's just some fundamentals that you're going to have to learn how to navigate, especially within business, because as fast as technology is evolving, as quickly as we are gaining new resources and new outlets and new ability to connect with people around the world, the business, the core of business, the people who really run the business are still those folks that are stuck into a 400-year-old process and they are fighting the change. And so, if you don't understand what you're looking for, if you don't know how to navigate within that 400-year antiquated process, yeah, you can kick the door in or you can go in there shouting and screaming that this is wrong, but it's not going to turn out well for you. Business evolves from the inside out. These people know what's changing, they understand technology, they understand where the world is headed, but they also know that the way that they made their money is the way that they made their money. And they never want to lose that ability. So I want season 2 to help us not only enter into these antiquated processes, but learn how to make it work for us, the new generation, the future leaders, the people who traditionally enter into the workforce and become more frustrated, discouraged, and disengaged, uh, that forces them to jump into entrepreneurship prematurely or forces them to find financial resources in some unhealthy and unsustainable ways. Season 2 is also for those leaders that are holding on to some antiquated thought processes. I mean, have you ever heard somebody that's been around for a long time and they always talk about, oh, these young folks don't understand, right? Everybody wants to complain. If you live long enough, you'll be able to understand. Well, sometimes that may not be true. It if you built your career outside of this new technological expansion, then that doesn't necessarily mean that using that or the youth that have been born into this that they are wrong. Because I want to talk to you, our older folks, our folks that's been out there for a while. There was a time that you were that young person that the people in generations before you thought that you were insane. that thought that you had no potential. And you showed them because you were able to carve a new way. All I'm asking is to listen, understand, reflect back on your journey, and give someone else, the next generation, the ability to adapt, refine, and improve how business is done, how earning is done. Okay, that's my soapbox for the moment. I just need to get that out there. And again, if you have listened to season one, my one rule of the A Better Way of Earning podcast is we are not always going to agree with each other, but that doesn't mean that we cannot have a conversation. In this world, especially because we're now all tied to our phones and our computers and et cetera, and streaming and all these other different things, we're losing the human connection and the ability to allow each one of us to be okay with being ourselves. We don't always have to agree. We don't always have to have the same experiences. But what we do have to do, especially if you're a part of A Better Way of Earning, is have respect for each other. So I always welcome the pushback. I always welcome the different perspectives because that's how I learn also. Again, as I started this, I'm never going to be that person that says that I know everything and my way is the only way because that's absolutely not true. No one has the only way to do this. We have resources, we have information, we have experience, and we have knowledge of tools. But no one can ever tell you that who you are, how you think, how you feel, and what you envision for yourself is wrong. And we got to get out of that. What can you expect on season two? We're going to talk about things of why smart people stay broke. We're going to cover some of the biggest mistakes that people make at 22. And why 22, Doc? I say that because oftentimes, if you think back to like your high school career counselor or the reason that you went off to college or impact of parents or whatever, most of us chose career paths because someone else told us that that's what we're going to be good at. Why were we allowed to, or why does that work that way? Because we don't know. So, most people, I think the number is around 77% of people that go to college and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a degree just to find out once they got into that industry, I don't like this. Who said that I was supposed to be good at this? And that's only because we are guiding people the wrong way. We are projecting our own thoughts, opinions, and experiences on a group of young adults or entering adulthood youth and placing them in a space that may not be right for them. So, here at A Better Way of Earning, we're going to talk about some of those things. We're going to talk about how hiring actually works, not about the dress and the words to say or how many resumes that you have sitting in your computer right now that says the right thing to get the right job. But we're going to talk about behind the scenes. What happens? What the hiring professionals look for, what they say when you leave, and why some people get the job and some people don't get the job. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about sales. Why do I want to talk about sales? Because most people don't realize that before you are successful in any career or any industry, you have to understand a little bit about sales. Doesn't mean that you're in a sales job, but you have to understand what sways people. How do you get someone to buy into even you? It's a sales job. So, we're going to talk about sales as a life skill. We're going to talk about failing as an entrepreneur and getting back up. We're going to keep going over multiple streams of income, but mostly we're going to help you to design a life that you actually want. Don't you want that? Because what you don't want to do is reach a certain age and look back and realize that you have more life behind you than in front of you before you get the aha moment that I didn't even have to go through all this way, that there was a better way for me to do that. And so we're going to talk about those things. Again, why is this important for me? Because no one taught me this. I spent a long time feeling like something was wrong with me because I looked at things different. I approached things different. I couldn't even enjoy my own success because I thought that my success that I was having was either fleeting, false, or unsustainable because it my pathway didn't look like everybody else's. And that robbed me of the ability to really celebrate a lot of wins that I've had over the few decades because I was trying to fit into someone else's shoes. I didn't know that my success was success because it didn't follow the other podcast person or the other celebrity or the other influencer or what I was seeing online or what other people said success actually looked like. And I want to stop that. If there's one mission that I have is to help people to find your better way of doing things and love it. Love it. Love yourself. Love what you do. Appreciate the good, the bad, and the ugly about who you are. Because the more that you embrace who you are and what you're great at and what you do, the better you're going to be at having a better life. I truly believe that there is more than one pathway to a meaningful life, career, relationships, experiences. And one thing that I learned from losing my son is we only got one shot at this. There's no do overs. We don't get a moment that we can just wake up from that internal sleep and say, hey, tag me back in. I just realized the things that I missed, the things that I didn't do, the things that I was stressed about that really wasn't worth it. So let me go back for another 10 years or so and let me redo that. We don't get that chance. So the only opportunity that we have is to begin to evaluate how we feel about where we are and the things that we can do to adjust that. And I never want anybody to feel like that everybody has to be unhappy with their life or everybody has to keep driving towards something else. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is each and every one of us have one thing that we deserve, and that's peace, that is happiness, and that is fulfillment within our life. Now, what that looks like is up to you. But if no one gives you some different avenues and ways to look at things, you may feel like that you'll never get that. You'll never achieve that. You may find that or hear that people say because of where you grew up or what your bank account looks like or how many kids you have or how many kids you don't have or what's happened with your relationships or how many marriages or non-marriages or what your sexuality is or what your race is or how tall you are or how short you are, what your hair looks like, what your nails look like, what your eyelashes look like, what your body looks like, what your private parts look like. Come on now. Everybody has some reason to measure how great you are. But what you might find out through listening to this podcast is despite what the public playbook says, you're okay. You are right where you need to be. And you are not defined by your past. You're not defined by your economic status. And I know that there's some people out there thinking, now don't turn it off yet. Just stick with me when I say this. Some of the most non-financial, stable people live some of the happiest lives because they're okay with their little corner of the earth. They didn't buy into the fact that society says that they have to look a certain way or have a certain clothes. It's those of us that buy into that public playbook that find ourselves unhappy with where life is for us. Not to get biblical on you, but think about it. This has been a battle for human beings since the beginning of time. Adam and Eve were created, put in a paradise, was given reign over all of the plants and the animals, etc. They only had one rule: not to eat from the fruit of the tree. And because they were tempted and Eve ate that apple, they had been around each other. They had enjoyed their moment. They had loved each other. They had seen each other. But once they ate the fruit of the tree, they now hid because they realized that they were naked. They realized and they saw things that they were never supposed to see. That one step exposed them to now feeling insecure about who they were when just the day before they were happy. And so oftentimes what we look at when we're scrolling past things, information that we read, things that we hear may be our poison fruit that begins to change how we see ourselves from the day before. And we got to uncover that. We have to dig deeper into that because you might have been okay, but because someone else has imparted something else inside you to make you feel like that your life isn't worth anything, you now believe it. Here at A Better Way of Earning, one of my biggest jobs is to let each and every one of us know that we have value, that we have worth. And no matter where we sit in life, whatever day that we're in, we need to celebrate that day. We need to celebrate the ability that we have another chance to enjoy, improve, execute, whatever we need to do. But we can't when we sit in lives of depression or competition or comparison. That can rob decades from your life. Take it from somebody who knows. Now, that's my spiritual moment for it. Let me just also insert there. I don't want anybody to ever listen to this podcast and say, she's all over the place. Sometimes she's spiritual, sometimes she's cursing. I'm a complex person. So, and I've embraced that. But you'll always know my heart. No matter how I deliver it or what vessel or analogy that I use, I understand who I am. I know where my spiritual faith lays. But I also know that my level of communication is my line of communication. That's how it is. But anywho, whether you're a student, a recent grad, a career changer, an entrepreneur, or someone simply trying to figure out what's next, this season 2 has been built for you. I'm not here to tell you what success should look like. I'm here to help you build a version of success that actually belongs to you. Welcome, my friends, to season 2 of A Better Way of Earning. If this is your first time listening, go back, find season 1, listen to season 1, subscribe, follow, and please, please, please share this with someone who is trying to find their better way within their journey. Because the sooner that we stop chasing someone else's definition of success, the sooner we can begin building our own. I'll see you in the season.